LawHelp program coordinator, Sam Halpert, to this group. Sam joined us in September and is going to be taking us through our two main agenda items on this call, which include an update and discussion of the new LawHelp referral maintenance tool that is being developed through a TAKE partnership with Legal Assistance of Western New York and LawHelp New York this year. And then we wanted to brief the community and get any reactions as well on product assessment we have been doing on the next generation of LawHelp software, and we've been undertaking that with Eve Riccardi, who is joining us from Iowa Legal Aid with support of TAKE funding. So I think we've got a bio of Sam on the next slide, and he came to us from the National Association of Law Placement, where he was responsible for developing and maintaining psjd.org. He is a recent graduate of Georgetown Law, and where he also worked on policy analysis for living wage advocacy and homelessness-related litigation strategies, and he has a deep tech background as well, which included 3 years of working in the Harvard Adaptive Technology Lab, as well as being doing freelance web development work and various other tech roles. So we're really excited about the combination of his law background and tech enthusiasm and experience, and bringing that to the LawHelp community. And I know he's worked with and connected with a number of you directly already, but if that hasn't happened yet, I'm sure he will be he'll be in touch, and we'll make sure to get him connected individually with folks as well, but he hasn't had an opportunity to meet virtually yet. So welcome, Sam. And we've also, in addition to Jillian, the other member of our program team who's joining us today is Mike Grunenwald, our program coordinator focusing on Pro Bono Net and Pro Bono technology initiatives here at PBN. So, Sam, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to get us started.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Liz. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to sort of meet you. I'm still adjusting to my role as a disembodied voice, but I'll do the best that I can today to get us through the two major topics that I want to be able to cover with you. The first is I would love to share with you some of our thinking about the new referral maintenance tool that we've been developing through a TIG grant in partnership with LawHelp New York. I'm very happy to see a few of the people that we've been working with in New York on the call today. Thanks, Caitlin. Also, it's good to see you. And then after we talk through that, which is going to involve hopefully some serious discussion where we'll be able to get feedback from you about a few places in the design of that project where I think we're going to have to make some tough choices. And I want those choices to be directed by your interests and your instincts as a community about how you want to manage your relationships with contacts at the legal services organizations that you work with for the referrals on LawHelp. And then the second component of the call, major component, is going to be a discussion of the next generation of the LawHelp program that I've been working with Legal Aid LawHelp Iowa on to try to find the best chat product to move that program forward. And then at the end, just sort of let you know about a few other things that are coming up before the end of the year, and that should be our day. So I'd like to begin, as I said, with the referral maintenance tool. There we go. And what I'd like to do is show you some of the desired capabilities that we've come up with in our conversations, what we hope the tool will be able to do for you, and then talk about some of the design challenges that we're anticipating when we try to actually execute all of those different features. And then, baked into those challenges are going to be a couple of key design choices that we need to make as a community.
I think we're picking up a little bit of background noise, so if folks can mute themselves locally, if you've got us on speakerphone, that would be great.
Someone has an adorable baby, it sounds. So As we go through this, I want to emphasize that you're going to see a lot of material that looks like it's already part of LawHelp or the LH3 backend, but it's not. These are set pieces that I've built. So they'll look pretty good. They'll give you guys a good idea of what you can expect, but these are not features that already exist, right? These are just flats. And so I want to make that very clear. So to begin with, let's talk about the capabilities, what we're hoping this referral maintenance tool is going to be able to do for you. And whenever you talk about what the technology is going to do, it's important to keep in mind who the users are. And right now, for this conversation, we need to think about three distinct groups of users. Right? We have the LawHelp visitors, the lay people that come to LawHelp sites for the legal referral info. And they're supported by you, the LH3 admins, right, who are responsible for maintaining the content the visitors see and who, importantly, are real experts at using the LawHelp platform. And the referral maintenance tool is going to pull all the way back even further along the chain and be interacting with your organization contacts who are not experts in the LawHelp platform, but who have the information that visitors need that you're hoping to get updated on a more regular basis. So the tool is going to involve all three groups of people. And before we get into the features, the last thing that I want to do is sort of give you a preview of the choices that I'm going to try to frame for you as I talk. A major choice is going to be trying to strike the right balance between your control over all of the content that ends up on the public-facing parts of LawHelp and your ability to capture time savings by getting organization contacts to do data entry for you, making your life easier. We may not be able to achieve both of those maximally, and so we're going to have to balance them off against one another. Another important choice that we need to make as a community is which form fields in the organization profiles we really need organization contacts to be updating on a regular basis. We're going to have to winnow the complete list down significantly for reasons that I hope will become clear to you. And so how we do that and which pieces we choose to strip out is going to be very important. So those are the two choices that we're going to be talking about when I finish with what I have to say in about 12 or 15 minutes. I just wanted to make sure that we all are on the same wavelength as we begin. So the first group of users that I mentioned are the LawHelp visitors. They're not going to see much change. We hope to be able to create a component that will let them leave feedback about problems that they're having with the referral profiles, but mostly the changes that occur are going to be invisible to them. The goal is that their experience will be better because the information that they receive will be more complete and more up-to-date than it is now. But from their perspective, not very much at all is going to change. Now, from your perspective, the tool is going to transform radically. We're hoping to deliver a lot of new features for the LH3 admins. We want to make it possible for you to send automated update reminders to organization contacts, both one-time reminders and regularly scheduled reminders that occur periodically. You should be able to send these reminders both singly to a single organization and in batches based on any set of criteria that you choose to group different organizations into different batches. We want to let you review the organization contacts update action. So once you send these update reminders, we need to make it easy for you to keep track of which organizations are following through. So which organizations have reminders that you've sent them that they haven't acted on yet, which organizations have ignored the reminders that you sent them, just let them expire, and which ones have actually provided update information that's available for you to view and hopefully use to bring their profiles up to date. Finally, for those ones that have provided updated information, as I mentioned, you'll be able to approve their updates and integrate the new information into the public version of LawHelp. We want you to be able to evaluate your referral directory's overall health. in a fairly straightforward manner. So you should be able to check how recently all listings have been updated. You should be able to check how recently all organizations have been contacted about updating their listings. You should be able to peek ahead at the upcoming scheduled reminders, so how many of these reminders are going to go out to organizations in the near future. And you should be able to check on organization listings when visitors give feedback letting you know that there seems to be a problem with one or more of them. So I'll show you what each of these might look like. First of all, we talked about sending single update reminders to particular organizations. And you'll probably be able to do that, we hope, through something like this tickler tab that we can add to the LH3 backend. And you'll see that it contains the contact info that would be pulled over from the general tab because it really belongs in this section, I think. But then the actual tickler can be driven by the scheduling section, where you'll be able to set the date for the next outreach, a repeating reminder. So if you want an organization to receive it every 12 months, every 18 months, and so on, and potentially whether you want the organization to have privileges only to comment on their profile or privileges to change it directly, although that's going to be the most tricky part of this system to build and one of the things that we need to have a conversation about later.
Sam,
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. We're getting a little feedback that your audio is a little garbled, so you might just try adjusting your headset if you're using it.
Okay. I don't know how much I'll be able to adjust my headset. I can call in over the phone if that's going to help people.
Let's see if folks are still having problems with it. Let us know, and then maybe we can switch to phone if it doesn't improve after a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good. So I also mentioned that we want to make it possible for you guys to send batch reminders to a whole bunch of organizations, or set a whole bunch of organizations to have the same update reminder profile all at once. And you'll be able to do that from this view that you're all familiar with. You can filter your list however you want, and then once you have it set the way you like it, you can use the checkboxes, or we hope you'll be able to use the checkboxes, and then click this Send Tickler button. And when you do, you'll see the same sort of interface that you saw in the Tickler tab, letting you set the date and the priority group and privileges for the entire group of people that you've just selected. Once you have these ticklers, these reminders going out and coming back in, it's going to be important to keep track of the status of these different organizations and what they've done with these reminders. And that's going to happen through, hopefully, this column, where you can keep track of the status of different ticklers and maybe name something else in the final version. But the point is that you'll be able to locate the organizations where there is a reminder out with that organization. So they have an email that they have received from the system that we are waiting for them to act on. You'll also be able to see organizations that have allowed the email. Go back. Okay. For whatever reason, it's not letting me move back to the previous slide. One moment. So what I'm trying to show you is sometimes organizations are going to ignore the emails, and if they do that, then that will be noted here as well, that it'll say expired or something like that, and just notify you that they had an email that went out to them and they haven't done anything with it. And that's a category of organizations that you may want to contact personally. Finally, the slide that we're actually on, you should be able to see which organizations have acted on their emails and sent back in material that you can review and integrate into the public version of the site. So you'll be able to see all of that through this column is the ideal. When an organization sends material back in, we need to give you guys the ability to approve that material and integrate it into the public version of the profile. And so most likely, hopefully, that'll be a feature of something like this, where you'll be able to see the proposed update that the organization has submitted underneath each field in the profile, and by clicking a button that says approve or something like it, you'll be able to move that information directly into the profile and then hit save at the bottom and have it push through to the public version of LawHelp. We also want you to be able to evaluate the health of the directory overall by checking how recently all listings have been updated. There's already a modified on or after section in the filter. We can also add sections for contacted on or after, or so that you can see how recently all the different organizations have been contacted by filtering the list below, or how soon different groups of organizations are scheduled to be contacted by the system by filtering the list below as well. In addition to being able to see all of this information in tabular format by using these filter tools, I've been experimenting with what I'm able to achieve by downloading this content report. This is a feature that already exists. You can download the content report, but once you do that, I'm playing around with different ways of generating visualizations from that information that make it easier to see at a glance what the overall status of the organizations in the directory are. This is something that I'm very excited about, that I'm working on right now. It's not ready to share with you all, but I plan to bring you in on a beta test of it, hopefully at the beginning of next year. Finally, as I mentioned, you'll hopefully be able to peek ahead at scheduled reminders and see how many of these particular updates are scheduled to go out in the near future using the filter. And you'll be able to download that information as well, and hopefully we'll have some visualizations to beta test for that. The last thing you'll be able to do as far as evaluating the health of the directory is check on the different organization listings when visitors have given feedback indicating that there's some sort of problem. So I showed you on the front end, visitors are going to see a button that lets them leave feedback about a particular organization profile. It should be relatively easy to see which pieces or which profiles have received a lot of feedback and potentially therefore might need to be updated. And again, in the tickler tab, you'll see hopefully a feedback log that will give you a sense of what people have to say. So it looks as though this profile, for instance, the phone number has stopped working. So you may need to reach out to that organization early and try to determine what their working phone number is. And then once you've resolved an issue that's been reported, you'll be able to retire those pieces of feedback so that they no longer show up in the count, and make sure that those counts on the front end indicate suggestions that people have given you that you haven't acted on yet. So that's all of the capabilities for you as LawHelp administrators. Finally, it's worth turning toward what we hope this new tool is going to be able to do for the organization staff, your organization contacts that have the information that you need. They're going to need to be able to receive these emails reminding them to update their lawhelp.org listings. They're going to need to be able to quickly and easily verify their identities with LawHelp. And they're going to need to be able to quickly and easily provide feedback on each component of their LawHelp listings. And the quickly and easily component is really crucial for reasons that I'll get into in just a moment. One option for feedback that we're experimenting with is to introduce them to the back-end interface that you all work with, the LH3 backend. Another option would be to try to build a front-end style interface for them so that their experience would look much more like the experience that visitors to LawHelp have. We're not sure which is technically better from a technological standpoint, and we're still evaluating that. I'm going to show you what both of those might look like today. So the automatic reminder emails would probably look something like this, giving them a brief explanation of why they're receiving the message, why it's important that they act on it, and then the link that they can click on in order to engage with LawHelp. When they click on that link, we are hoping to do two things to make sure that only the organization contacts that you are actually interested in getting updates from have access to this tool. One is to make the link time sensitive, probably a period somewhere around 2 weeks, we're imagining. So after 2 weeks, 2 weeks after receiving the email, the link will no longer work. That's when, incidentally, the status of the tickler would change from out to expired in the filter view that I showed you earlier. And then second, when they click on the link, the system will ask them just to confirm the email address at which they received the update reminder. Hopefully between these two things, we'll be able to ensure that only the people we're interested in are interacting with the system without making organization staff remember a password that they're only going to use at most once a year. So once they've confirmed their identity, the front-end style feedback might look something like this. This is just the same format as the public profile that visitors would see, but the different sections have been converted into form fields that they can edit. We are asking the organization contacts, or we imagine asking them, to verify every single piece of the profile. So in other words, every field is a required field, but if the content looks good, you can just click a button that indicates that everything looks okay, and that form field will be frozen just as it is. So striking a balance between making sure that they're looking at everything on their profile and making it relatively easy for them to interact with. The other option would be to introduce them to the back-end area. And we might do that by providing a link, showing them the public profile first to sort of orient them and give them a sense of context, and then showing them a link very similar to the link that you all see now to edit, some of the flat pages on the site or some of the widget spaces, but have that link take them directly into the back-end profile. You'll notice that this has been significantly stripped down. There are only 2 tabs up at the top, General and Intake Methods. Most of the content in tabs that aren't intake methods has been consolidated into the general profile for this. I'm imagining that they would need to see a significantly streamlined version of the backend for reasons that I'll get into in a moment. It's not clear to me exactly which pieces would make it into that streamlined vision. That's one of the things that I want to talk to you about, which is a great segue into the challenges that I'm anticipating with this project. The first one is developer time. The new system that we're imagining is significantly more sophisticated in 2 particular ways, and it may not be possible in the time that we have under the grant to build both of them out to their fullest potential. The first set of features that are going to take a significant amount of time to build are the features related to administrator control. We understand that it's important for everyone that organizations not be able to directly change their information on LawHelp. So in the capabilities, we've imagined a system where you are able to sign off on to approve each change that they propose. But this part of the system where you're monitoring the inputs that are coming from organizations may be prohibitively time-consuming to build. The portion that goes like this, where they type it into a form, and then you click the approve button, and then it ends up on the public end of the site. Another component that will take a significant amount of time to build is the section that divides an organization profile into its component pieces for your contacts, so they provide you with information that's immediately and directly useful in LH3. Right? If they put everything into these separate boxes, you don't need to retype it on your end, the way most of you probably do as you get updates right now. One way to shorten development time on the system that we've imagined would be to skip the distributed data entry. We could create a new system that reminds organizations to talk to you, but doesn't really change the way the information comes to you. It still comes to you in bulk, and you have to do the labor of taking the inputs that the organizations give you and manually feeding it into LH3. That might look something like this, right? An organization would be taken to a view on the front end that just prompted them in a giant box to give you feedback about what needs to be corrected, and then shows you in a box on the sidebar on the back end what they had to say. You would then need to take that information, put it in the correct field, copy and paste, retype it yourself. However, this could potentially create more work for you because the system would make it easy for organizations to give you a lot of timely update information without making the task of getting that information into the website easier. Another way to save on developer time would be to skip building that system for administrator control. So take away the dials and the levers and your role in that part of LH3 and have the organization contacts feeding things directly into the system and having it come out to users. You would still be able to check this information for errors, but not before it had already gone live. Right? So the organization types things into the field, and it directly impacts what's happening on the website. We understand that it's important to you that organizations not be able to directly change their information on LawHelp, but developing a system where you get to sign off and approve each change they propose may end up being prohibitively time-consuming to build. So this is the first choice that I want to talk through with you all, is how to strike a balance between giving you control over the content that your organization contacts are submitting on LawHelp and capturing what I see as one of the real promises of a tool like this, which is distributing the chore of data entry across all of the different organizations who maintain listings on LawHelp instead of centralizing it in your hands. So I'd love to pause at this point and see if anyone has thoughts about if we have to choose between these two, which feels more important.
Are you asking for comments now?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, it's Leah Margulies from LawHelp New York, and I am sorry I was late. I had a little emergency. I don't know the answer to this yet, but even though I'm not sure we discussed it before, but the issue of having that box, your last screen, where people could just put in what their changes are and then we would have to implement them, may not be as bad time-consuming wise as you think, only because we have a hard, even without the system in place for the last couple of years, getting people to really read and give us their feedback. We don't have, even though we have so many organizations and projects listed on LawHelp New York, getting them to review it actually is the biggest part of the effort. It is not actually making the changes.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say, I know when we did some sort of workshopping of the concepts that Sam is presenting here with Leah and her LawHelp New York colleagues and staff from Legal Assistance of Western New York. And, I remember just an ad hoc comment, Leah, that, there are hundreds of organizations listed on LawHelp New York, and there may be some that in theory you would want to give at some level of admin control over, but that would certainly not be the entire universe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we would even get them to look at it without, most of our time is spent in getting them to review and making sure everything is correct. And one of the things that we've taken to doing is just comparing their listing to their website ourselves. we're the ones that seem to care more about being correct. Although, yeah, we just got a couple of corrections in that are good, and some people are diligent about, you know, making sure that the listing is up to date. But I'm not sure that box idea is such a bad idea. In other words.
Okay. Good to know. I will. Yes.
I see a comment from Lisa Stansky, who coordinates Louisiana LawHelp, and she said it is easier if contacts can just type in the new information and if the information is kept very streamlined.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I'm not sure, Lisa, which approach that's a vote for.
Hi, can you hear me? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I can hear you now.
Great. I wasn't sure. I unmuted myself. You know, I have to see all this in operation to fully appreciate it, but I'm just saying in general, having worked with several of these and having worked with the LH2 generation site, I agree with Leah, the hardest thing is motivating people to do it, but I found that folks who were motivated really like just, you know, if their phone number changed, they just in red, it was just highlighted automatically. They just typed the new information that showed up in a different color in the field, the form field. But given that almost every organization we're going to deal with will have a website, it seems like the referral section doesn't have to be as comprehensive as it used to be. Maybe, and that might make it easier because anything to a lot of these organizations seems daunting. And if it's like, is your name right? Is your address, phone number right? Is your website right? You know, and just like one line about what you do, maybe, because it's really, the organizational data is really quite extensive, and folks just, if they see more than a couple of fields, and often what would happen is they wouldn't even touch that. They would just make sure their name, address, phone number, and website were correct, and they wouldn't go beyond that. You know.
Okay.
This is Leah again. The only thing, Lisa, I can appreciate that, but like in New York, you're looking at something that's the Hurricane Disaster Relief Program. Legal Aid Society in New York City has 26 entries on LawHelp New York for all their different programs. They all have different intake numbers, different hours, different locations. There's some serve the Bronx, some serve Brooklyn. There's a different number for their housing practice from their public benefits practice. You get the picture. It's not.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, and I see that. That's why I'm saying it's like so tough for these organizations sometimes to keep up on their own. But then, you know, it gets into such a level of detail that if it's wrong, it really steers people astray sometimes because they'll think, oh, they don't do phone intake or whatnot, and they do because the organization hasn't had the time to indicate otherwise. So I don't know what the best solution is. It might be to have a flexible approach where organizations that want to provide the whole 9 yards can, but that there's a minimalist approach for organizations that just want to have like name, like basic, you know, focus, address, phone, email, not email, well, if you want that, or, you know, website, just so, you know, this is the organization, basically what it does. You know, because folks will be surfing on their phones, and a lot of other organizations might be clicking anyway. So, but I don't know. I mean, that might not be a viable approach or a desirable approach.
No, I mean, so I think that that's a great comment. I think it anticipates the second choice that I want to talk through today. So that's very helpful. I mean, as far as, you know, what we're discussing at the moment, the challenge with this single box approach is it's not going to call an organization contact's attention to any particular piece of information in the way that the these field by field approach does. Once you've built this field by field approach, that is the distributed data entry. So I'm not sure if there's a middle ground, but I can try to
Well,
explore it.
I'm sorry.
one of the oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I personally think that the field-by-field approach is easier for our people we deal with, and I won't talk more because I know I'm taking too much.
You're not wasting time.
Yeah, but I found that was easier, I think, for people to deal with.
And I think, Lisa, to your point just about the complexity of organizational profiles, I think regardless of what approach we end up taking to this referral maintenance tool, there may be some work that programs that want to adopt it would want to undertake to do some housekeeping of their organizational profile data. So, and I know a number of people on this call and states did this when we moved to LH2 to LH3, but LH3 is much more flexible in terms of if you need a lot of very granular data captured in an organization profile, it supports that. Or if you want to have a much more minimal approach overall or to particular organizations, you can have that as well. LH2 was much more structured. You had to have data for many more required fields, and LH3 is more flexible in that way. So for programs that are looking at sort of jump-starting or adopting this tool, that might be something to think about in the planning process. And then I just wanted to, Mike, who has some experience with this, obviously at PBN and helping to be a sounding board for these ideas, but also was formerly coordinated LawHelp DC, he made a comment that if people agree that a major challenge is getting organizations to review their profiles, then we should any feedback on the tickler element specifically would be very helpful because that is the first step in the process. And
yes.
The place where organizations are going to get the first contact for this process.
I also think that as far as that challenge goes, this is a conversation for another time, but because LawHelp is a statewide centralized hub for people looking for legal assistance, we have a lot of information, or each of you is sitting on a lot of information about the legal needs of people, county by county, even in your state, potentially. And we could, at some later date, have a conversation about how do we present that information in a way that is valuable to organizations. Because I think that one way to transform that relationship that you're describing with them would be to build tools that would make LawHelp a valuable place for them to visit, right? Because by visiting LawHelp, by maintaining a presence on our site, they get information about the legal needs of their community in a useful way. So it's not just us asking them for something, but giving them something in return. That's not part of the scope of this project, but if that's a major challenge, it might be one that's worth taking on separately.
Yeah. So a concrete example of that in the last version of the tickler was when people got that email, they saw how many views their organization had or how many views their resources had in the last period of time for the resource tickler.
Hey, this is Danielle in Washington. In our state, I think that the approach of having them being able to edit the fields themselves would work best for us. We don't have, as many organizations as some other states, but and I don't think I need to have the admin control over that. If I was sent a notice that something was updated and then I could check it, I guess, that would be sufficient for me.
Okay.
That's a good point. If notice.
Okay. Would you how loud would you need that notice to be? Would you want would it be enough to sort of go to that screen and sort and see, oh, these ones have updates that have come in, or would you want to get an email that said, Legal Aid New York has just made changes to its profile, you should review them immediately?
No, I think it's similar to how we know people have left feedback on the site. So when we log in as an administrator, you know, it tells us we have 3 feedback messages waiting, or just something to draw attention that there's been updates made when we log in as an administrator would be fine with me.
Okay. That's super helpful.
How would you do that in a way that you could be assured that a group's profile was looked at? That's the other side of the problem that I see is, you know, we always say that we are committed to reviewing and making sure everything is updated each year. So in order to be able to live up to that commitment.
When you say was looked at, by whom? By the organization or by you guys?
Well, I guess it's by the organization. They're supposed to, I mean, in New York anyway, the organizations that are funded by our IOLA program have to say on their annual report that they have reviewed their listing on LawHelp New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always get a few people, when's the last time we looked at our listing? And, you know, I don't know.
Right. Okay, so the thought is, and you know, and so here's the stage set that I was talking about beforehand. The thought is that every field is a required field. So none of these are skippable. Instead, if something looks fine, all you do is click the thumbs up, and then it'll just lock that portion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? But that way, you know with a fair amount of confidence that every single piece has been looked at because they've had to react in some way to everything that we put on here.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, or that's the theory. So that's something that is achievable. You know, if we split it out field by field. If we just have a box for updates or corrections, it'll be very difficult to know that they've examined each section.
Yeah.
So we just have about 10 minutes left, and I know we need to cover the LawHelp piece too, so I wonder if we, Sam, if there are any major other points or questions you want to raise here, we can do that in the next few minutes. And then to give people a sense of the overall timeline and arc of this project, by the end of November, we need to have the requirements for this project finalized, and as part of a TIG milestone, we actually have to submit them to LSC and get approval on those. So we need to do that have the final approach kind of documented by the end of November in order to submit that to LSC, and then we would be developing this tool in Q1 of next year and hopefully rolling it out you know, by the end of Q1, at least as an initial pilot in New York and then to other states soon thereafter. So if people, you know, we'll post these materials to this web support site, but if people want to think about this and review them in more detail and send us emails or reach out to Sam directly, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk with people one-on-one over the next couple of weeks too. But we'll be taking some of this back to another follow-up session with Leah and her team to kind of workshop through some of this in more detail the week of November 16th.
Yes, and I'm also going to start a conversation on the listserv, I think, just to continue, you know, to continue the exchange that we've been having today. Thank you so much for your input on this. It's super helpful to me. I'm going to blow through the second one, which luckily Lisa already sort of anticipated, which is I'm concerned about the complexity of the forms that we might be presenting to organizers or to organizations, right? Because right now their interactions are fairly simple. They can just write you an email or talk to you on the phone, and that's how they get their information into LawHelp. This is all of the different pieces of a LawHelp organization profile as it currently stands. And you guys are experts and you're very invested in the system, figuring out how it works, knowing how it works, getting it right. But my fear is that if we present organizations with something that is too time-consuming to use or to learn and comprehend when they only have a casual relationship with it, their reaction is going to be to just ignore it and wait for that phone call or that email from you so that they can do it, in person. And so I mentioned earlier, the second key challenge that we're going to have to face, the choice that we need to make, is which of these form fields in the profile are the ones that we really need that yearly checkup on with every organization. And sort of winnowing that list down as far as we possibly can is going to be crucial. I have some ideas about that, but I think that you guys are the ones that are really going to know. And so that's the conversation that I look forward to having in the next couple of weeks as we finalize the requirements for this by the end of November, as was mentioned. So because we talked about that a little bit in our conversation already, and because we're running low on time, I want to move straight through to the LawHelp 2.0 progress report, unless somebody has a burning need to tell me something right now. Great. Thanks so much, everybody.
And Sam, maybe I can just, I think this is part of your intro, but just to kind of bring everybody up to speed on the LawHelp piece, because I think there's some people on this call who have heard about this project a little bit, and others for whom it might be newer, and then jump into your progress updates. Does that sound okay?
Of course.
Great. So I think, as folks may be aware of from our network session at TIG and calls earlier this year, as well as some discussion on the LS Tech listserv from earlier this year that I think Eve and Xander and others might have been involved in, we're in a partnership, TIG-funded partnership with Iowa Legal Aid this year to do a product assessment and testing and make recommendations for kind of the next generation of LawHelp live chat software to support current and future LawHelp initiatives. And there are a few drivers to this, some of which are just new needs and new ideas programs have about how they want to be using live chat in their statewide website, online intake, document assembly ecosystems. Another driver is that we have heard from LivePerson, the software provider for many of the LawHelp projects in the community, that they are wanting to move and migrate programs off of the current LivePerson Pro platform onto their new platform called Live Engage, and there will be a point at which they will want to sunset or decommission the LivePerson Pro platform. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but that's something that we need to be prepared for and be, since we're at that juncture, look at what other platforms, including Live Engage, might be a possibility for the community. And the community now includes a number of projects that Pro Bono Net has worked with directly to help stand up their LawHelp programs and that share that a single LivePerson account, as well as programs like LawHelp CA and others who are using other chat software. And so, the result of this doesn't necessarily preclude programs from going in their own direction or deciding that other software meets their needs better. The ones that we're testing, we're all testing on LawHelp. So, as part of this, it may be that we can offer access or just confirm that we can support multiple approaches. But because of this transition point that LivePerson is at with their software and just general growth and evolution within the community, we have undertaken this TIG that's underway now to do a much more structured assessment and come back and make recommendations to the community. So with that, Sam, I'll let you go through where we are to date. And we have Eve Riccardi from Iowa Legal Aid as well, who's been really helping to drive this process too.
Yeah, and I've been very grateful for her expertise with the live person system, which is, old for you guys and on its way out, but new to me, and in general for her help. And so I'm grateful that she's on this call. Thanks, Liz. That was very helpful. Now for the progress report, I just want to talk you through the key features that through a focus group we identified as really necessary to build into, to be a component of whatever product we end up using. The short list of 4 products that we are considering for this next generation of LawHelp, the testing methodology that we've come up with, which is fairly informal, but we thought through, and then the evaluation criteria that we've been using as we conduct our tests to try to wrap our heads around how one tool compares to another. And then to let you know the status of the test as it currently stands, we're about halfway through. So key features that we came up with: the ability to capture transcripts of all the different chats and share them either internally for training purposes or with the visitor that you chatted with. The ability to have canned chat responses that you can push out quickly to your visitors. The ability to share screens and see what the visitor is seeing. The ability to transfer files through the chat system to the visitor. A mobile feature letting visitors chat with you from their cell phones or their tablets, and hopefully automatic translation, so that if somebody chats you up in Spanish asking for directions on the website, you'll be able to understand them and respond in your own language and have it go through, whichever 2 languages are being used there. And the 4 programs that we've identified that achieve most of these features, if not all, are a program called Live Chat, and then one called Com100, OLARC, and Live Person's Live Engage system, their next generation system. And so this is where each of those fall within the different feature sets. Green is if the feature is built in and directly supported by the product. Yellow is where you can achieve that feature within that system by adding on a third-party extension to the tool. And red is if that feature does not exist in a given product. So to test these, we're taking 1 week per product. We're aiming for between 10 and 20 interactions within each product. We have it set up on 2 states on the LawHelp development server for the 2 people that are participating in the test, me and Eve. Each of us is set up as a navigator on a different state to make sure that the product does a decent job of sort of separating chats from different sites. And we pose as visitors to the other state's site to gauge how well the tool works. So far, often even I have ended up chatting in the tool about the tool, which can be a helpful way to sort of stay in touch with one another while we're conducting the test. While we engage in these interactions, we're looking at a variety of criteria. We're looking at how easy it is to set up each product, how often I get confused or stuck and have to call their tech support, how helpful their tech support is, that sort of thing. How easy it is to use the product, both as a navigator and as a visitor. How well the product manages our attention. If someone chats you, is it easy to tell that that's what's happened? Is there a sound? Is there a visual notification? Do you forget that it's running? That sort of thing. And then the quality of the key features that we identified, and the overall visitor experience from a visitor's perspective. And then we're looking at the reporting tools as well. In addition to these 6 criteria, we're looking at the cost of each of these products compared to one another, and then also their attitude towards security. These are in parentheses because that's not part of the live test. It's a separate evaluation that we're conducting. I can't get into price stuff with you guys yet, but odds are whatever the next system is, it will be cheaper than the current one. Nothing is set in stone yet, but we're optimistic about that. As far as security goes, we are just asking some basic questions of the different tools that we're looking at. Is the chat data encrypted at rest? Meaning not only is it locked when it's traveling through the wires between you and your visitors, but is it locked, are the transcripts encrypted when they're just sitting on a server somewhere? Who has access to our chat data? Can anyone that works for the company that runs the chat software access the data? Who's the official owner of the chat data? Is it considered the property of the company, or is it our property? And if we request that the transcripts be destroyed for some reason, will they honor that request? This is not necessarily crucial for what we're using these chat services for right now, which is just directing people around the website. But if you ever become interested in expanding into online chat-based legal assistance, it would be important to think through some of these security concerns, and so we're trying to anticipate them to make sure that we don't end up switching to a different product or asking, or you don't end up trying to support two separate chat programs, one for legal information and one for legal advice. And then the final one is we're just asking whether the product is HIPAA compliant, not because we need it to be, but because it's a reasonable barometer about how security conscious the company is, whether it's good enough for doctors. So as far as the status goes, we've tested 2 of these 4 products. We're in the middle of the second test week now. We've learned that even though they all have a similar feature set, these features function fairly differently and can be more intuitive or less intuitive across these different products. So we're getting a good feel for that. And we've learned that some of these third-party extensions, the yellow boxes on our chart, can really significantly complicate the chat experience, and so they are a less desirable solution than they appeared, reading on the product websites about how that was supported, and all you had to do was add in this additional piece. So that is the complete status update. Just because we are out of time, I want to mention 2 more things. We're going to be having our annual network session at the LSC TIG conference, and we would love your help brainstorming topics for that. We could do that over the listserv since we seem to have run out of time if we need to. And then also, everyone should be aware that on December 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, we are going to be having a webinar on the new Google Analytics toolkit that we've been building in partnership with Danielle and the folks at the Northwest Justice Project in Washington State. So that is everything. Does anyone have questions or comments? I know I blew through a lot of material quite quickly at the end. I apologize for that.
Yeah, this is Leah. Can you go back to that slide where you looked at the different companies and put in whether or not they had the required feature?
Yep.
That one.
There you go.
So only the live person has all of that?
Only live person has all of that, yes. And so when we come back to choosing a tool, we may have to decide whether we can live without any of these particular features. We haven't tested Live Engage yet, but it is by a significant margin. It is significantly more expensive, and in addition to all of these features, if it's like its predecessor, Live Person, I'm anticipating that it'll present a very complex layout. So some of these other tools that we've looked at have, most of the features that we need and only the features that we need, which makes them fairly easy to train people on and use. Whereas if Live Engage is like the current version of Live Person, it has so many features that it can be easy for navigators to get lost. And there's a cost there as far as training and proficiency of the staff that operate it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you are absolutely correct on that.
Yeah, and we, before the end of this year, we need to do another focused discussion with the LawHelp community specifically about the findings of these products and what our initial recommendations would be, and get the community's feedback on those. So for the people who have LawHelp projects that are on this call, we would definitely would love for you to participate in that. But if there's anybody who's thinking about LawHelp and wants to join that discussion, which will probably happen in early December, let us know as well. Great.
All right, I just want to throw the last slide up for one more moment. Oh, come on. Okay, so just to say that you guys should stay tuned for the December 12th webinar on Google Analytics Toolkit. It should be, well worth your time. And you can expect emails from me before the end of the week to continue the conversation that we started about the tickler and to solicit some brainstorm ideas for our network session at the TIG conference.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much for your attention, everyone. I hope that this was a useful meeting for you all, and I'm very excited to have had a chance to share some of the things I've been working on since joining the LawHelp team a couple of months ago.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sam. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.